Taunton is a Southwest's first garden town in terms of the new designation of garden towns. They come under the sort of oversight of Homes England, so actually Taunton isn't the first garden town from their perspective, because Homes England have the most bizarre definition of what is the Southwest. Reading, Sussex. Taunton was designated as part of the programme. I think we're not sure whether we were second or third wave of that, but the announcements were in early 2017, and the criteria for a garden town was around the amount of growth at that point, and there wasn't an awful lot of guidance in what we should pitch for in that respect. It was just a government wanting to see accelerated delivery. I think Taunton was seen as an opportunity for early delivery in terms of garden towns, because if we go and think about totally new communities from scratch, clearly there are the time horizons for delivery are quite long. And this is government talking about accelerated delivery and government timescales and spending review timescales and getting ministers next to bulldozers before the next general election, etc. I think a number of the garden towns were seen as good opportunities for areas that had already gone some way down the route of signing up for growth, and certainly Taunton has done that over the years. Going back to the regional spatial strategy, a lot of authorities stepped back from the figures. Taunton never did, and has been ambitious, and it has delivered in terms of the numbers. So I think that made it an attractive opportunity. It's similar, I suppose, to a number of the others in the programme. Other obvious places in the southwest like Didcot, Aylesbury, Bicester, all similar in those terms. We didn't know whether to pitch for a garden town status or whether to look at the garden villages programme, because there's 3 garden communities around. We call them garden communities now. They were urban extensions. They haven't changed that much in that respect, but I must call them garden communities, that we could have pitched for each one individually as a garden village. But we felt the benefits for Taunton and the link into government that we would get from being designated a garden town was for us. What you've got there on the slide is a lot more guidance that's come out with the latest prospectus, and I think it's sometime in November that people need to put their pitch for a new garden community, whether it be a garden village or a garden town. And I hear discussions around the southwest. I suspect there will be a number of bids coming forward. So there's a little bit more guidance, and I think the government have thought a bit more about the garden town brand and actually the benefits of quality in that, compared with the real focus on accelerated delivery only when we were bidding. But as I say, those are the headlines in terms of what they want people to bid the 10 requirements. I think there is a bit of a shift again from government in terms of upping the scale. You can bid for a garden village of 1,500 dwellings or more, but I think they really are looking at the 10,000 plus. So when they say sustainable scale, I think sustainable being big rather than down to a sustainable scale. There's a lot of motherhood and apple pie in all of this, isn't there? Well-designed places, great homes, whatever that they are, integrated transport, healthy places, green space, all of those things are certainly what we would want to see. I think the legacy and stewardship arrangements are interesting, bearing in mind where we are in terms of local authorities' abilities to influence that. whether there's something going to come further from government to assist us in that, because I don't think local authorities really at the moment, the Garden Town designation gives us anything special in those respects. So the work that we've done subsequent to designation has come up with this definition, and having mentioned motherhood and apple pie once, probably to a degree this is, but I think it's important that, you know, Taunton being distinctive, the vibrant identity is really important. That's come across very well. The green, healthy town, I think there are real opportunities for Taunton that may not necessarily be for all places for that. It's interesting in terms of a garden town vision to have a specific reference to wildlife, because I haven't seen that particularly in others. But obviously we want prosperous, sustainable, well-connected communities, but we also want exceptional quality of life. So it's ambitious in terms of what we need to achieve from where we are. In terms of, that's probably hopeless in terms of the back, so apologies in terms of that. That is a sort of a map of Taunton. What I will focus on is, I mean, there are three areas of growth that were identified back in the core strategy for Taunton. In the southwest, the sort of burgundy colour areas, the sort of Commitro Troll, southwest Taunton area. In the northwest, around Staple Grove, and in the east around Monkton Heathfield. Monkton Heathfield is in delivery, as it were. The other two are working way through the planning process. What I also want to highlight for Taunton is we'll come on to this again, there are pretty good town centre opportunities that don't necessarily apply elsewhere. There are a number of vacant sites along the riverside and opportunities to improve the quality and those are sites where the design review panel is and will have I think quite a lot of influence going forward. Council also has retained its housing stock, and therefore there are some quite ambitious estate regeneration proposals. Some have been delivered on a smaller scale, but certainly in North Taunton, I think there's some quite transformational proposals that you will see more of in terms of consultation over the coming months. The green bits are the green wedges. Taunton, I think, has a real opportunity in terms of actually bringing the countryside into the town centre, and I think that's where that reference to wildlife, I think there are great opportunities. It's quite unusual in terms of the way the green space comes so close to the town centre. On the south side of the town, in through Vivery Park, on the west side, right in to the town centre, and again on the east side. So there are really good opportunities there. They also provide real great opportunities for walking and cycling into the town centre from those garden communities. Something else that I think is fairly unique, and I know the objectors told us it was unique because they told us we couldn't do it, where in terms of the strategic employment site on Junction 25 and bringing forward a greenfield site through the local development order process, which has now gone through, and that has been adopted, backed with a design guide, and it will be interesting to see that site come forward, and the opportunities that the local development order brings. So the garden communities, which I'm sure is what the government really were most interested in terms of garden town status. Some of them have been around a long time. Monkton Heathfield goes back to the Taunton local plan in the late 90s, and the Taunton Dean local plan, I sat through a public inquiry 2006, I think it was, for the first phase of Monkton Heathfield. It was a long time in coming forward, and I think that's an issue for all of these sites, in terms of if you're going to put your eggs in a few baskets, and the big complex urban extensions, they do take quite a long time to come out of the ground, and that causes concerns, particularly in the current circumstances, with the need to deliver quickly and maintain a 5-year supply. But clearly, I would say that it's the right approach. So there's the 1,000 dwelling allocation, and I keep all of these. I refer to the number of dwellings, but they're all mixed use. There is employment, there are local centres, there are schools proposed for all of these sites. That is now getting close to being complete. The phase 2 part of Monkton Heathfield, that's the core strategy allocation, with a proposal for up to 3,500 new dwellings. That will be a challenge in terms of densities, of working with volume house builders to get the types of densities to deliver the numbers there. We are currently working on a master plan framework document for that site. That is something that has been referred initially to the design review panel. I suspect we may have more engagement coming forward on that. I think we want to do very much a 2-stage approach. One is to update the policy position to enable things to come forward that may not be quite strictly in accordance with the development plan, but with some council backing towards that, and then more detailed master planning following. The context of that is it's a bit of a race, really. The site is largely in the control of a consortium of Redrow and Persimmon, not entirely. There are other landowners' interests there. Their focus, as you would expect it to be, is around submitting a planning application rather than the master plan framework. So we need to make sure that we have our framework in place to when those applications are considered. There's also a neighbourhood plan context, and that will be interesting. It'll be a real first test for us. It will be interesting to see how the developers deal with the neighbourhood plan's requirement for 10% of dwellings to be bungalows. Doesn't apply to the whole of the site, but that will be interesting. So, great opportunities at Monkton Heathfield. Staple Grove, which is on the northern side of the town, allocation of approximately 1,600, again mixed use. The way the sites have come forward is slightly different, and I think it's a reflection of who you're dealing with. I think you get a different approach when you're dealing with site promoters as opposed to house builders. Inevitably, we end up dealing with house builders somewhere down the line. But in this site, PM Asset Management have promoted the eastern part of the site, and Ptarmigan Land the western part. I think the relationship generally has been good. Their engagement with the communities was good. We had a planning committee in this room. The engagement was very good, but we still had 200-300 people not wanting to see the development come forward. But I don't think anybody was critical of the process that we went through to get an adopted master plan framework in place before any planning applications were submitted. So we're now at a position where we have a resolution to grant outline planning permission in relation to that site. And we've had the announcement of a housing infrastructure fund bid for 7.2 million to construct the Spine Road. The due diligence to that seems to be taking an awful long time. The government did award an large number of HIF awards, and I think it is taking longer than we would have liked to have gone through the process, bearing in mind the timescales for delivery. But hopefully that will do 3 things really. It will accelerate delivery, it will reduce the impact on the local highway network, which certainly I think from the when we were here at the planning committee was a particular concern of the local population, and it will enable a primary school to be brought forward more quickly than would otherwise be the case. Third and finally, in terms of the context of the garden communities, is southwest Taunton, largely within the parish of Troll, but adjoining the existing community of Comitro. Primarily developers involved here, Bovis, Taylor Wimpey, Summerfield, and that is a site that's been allocated through the site allocation plan, 2,000 dwellings, mixed use. They are bringing forward the vast majority. Only a small part of that allocation has not come forward in a single outline planning application. Interestingly, the engagement was not quite done in the same manner, the collaborative manner that the Staple Grove one was. But I think the outcomes at planning committee were fairly similar. We went through planning committee in 2016 with a resolution to grant permission. I think it's safe to say that the developers are very keen to win the race to get to a resolution before the Troll neighbourhood plan became adopted. So there were certain specific things that they were concerned about in relation to that. So we got a resolution to grant planning permission, but then we have the debate about viability, as we regularly do. I know the government are very keen to bring forward all those discussions on viability going forward. I would like to see how that happens in future and how you avoid getting involved in those viability discussions late in the day, because we all still want to deliver housing. If it's challenged on viability grounds, I think it would be a brave council to refuse a planning permission on the basis simply that you should have done this earlier and not at this late point. What that has meant is that we're not now able to deliver the affordable housing to the 25% that is the local plan target. We've come ultimately it was agreed that 17.5% was what was deliverable. We're now in the process of finalising the Section 106 agreement. I think a particular challenge that we have in terms of delivering large sites, and maybe not a specific challenge to Taunton because there are plenty of others, is the challenge of delivering large sites with the community infrastructure levy in place. It's proved a huge challenge, and we've sat round the table with the developers on this site on a number of occasions, all scratching our heads, knowing exactly what we could agree what we want to do. It's allowing the regulations to get us to that point without legal challenge has really been the problem. I know a number of, probably the majority of authorities these days exclude their major sites from CIL. In some respects, that makes life easier. You deal with the tried and tested Section 106 and you come to an agreement. But in reality, I don't think that's perfect either. But that has certainly proved to be a challenge in that respect for us. And I'm a little concerned that CIL certainly needs reviewing in terms of delivering large sites, because it's generally accepted it's not ideal as it is. It seems to have got lost in government at the moment. The CIL review, I think it's tied up in a debate in the Treasury around land value capture, as far as I understand, but it certainly needs to come out the other side fairly quickly. I referred earlier to the fact that we're not only dealing with large sites on the edge of town in Taunton. There are a real range of town centre opportunities. This site is the Firepool site. It has a long, and I think some people would admit to being a painful history over the last 10 years or so since it ceased to be a cattle market. It's a complicated site. The council has done some good work in terms of trying to accumulate all the land that is necessary to deliver the site. It was part of the Taunton vision in the mid-2000s, is a fantastic 7-hectare site on the, linking right next to the railway station, linking between the railway station and the town centre. River frontage really is a superb opportunity. Those of you who read the local papers will have read in the last week that the council's development partners St Modwyn have pulled out of the site. I think in reality that St Modwyn's aspirations for the type of site that they deliver have changed through recent announcements. So that there is an opportunity to perhaps to look at that site again and what it will deliver. But this is a site that I think is a good example of the influence of the panel. It was allocated pre financial crisis, and at that point the plans for office development here were hugely ambitious, a very dense scheme. On the back of the Lions Review, there were discussions with government about government relocations and movement out of Whitehall of government departments at that time. The financial crisis really put an end to that, and a lot of time was spent in terms of coming up with revised proposals for Firepool. The scheme that came forward was a mixed-use scheme with a large amount of comparison retail and some food retail, as well as housing and bars and cafes along the river. Where a real benefit in terms of the design review panel here was a third party in the discussions, because it's complicated from my perspective as the local planning authority, the representative of the local planning authority, to deal with cases where the council has a land ownership interest in bringing the site forward. So the council does wear two hats, and inevitably at times there is conflict there in terms of what the council wants to bring forward as landowner and what the council considers to be acceptable as local planning authority. The scheme that came forward, the retail scheme, I had real concerns about initially. To me, it looked not like a town centre regeneration scheme. It was much more of a retail park, and lots of discussions with St Modwyn around actually you can't let retail units unless you can park your car outside and you have direct view to the stores. We got to a position where that was submitted as a planning application, and so there was a conflict there between the council promoting the scheme and council as local planning authority. So to have an independent view on it was really helpful, and we went to the design review panel, who largely supported, I think, the views of the local planning authority. There were elements that came forward from the panel which didn't necessarily reflect what my thoughts on it, but generally I think we were in a similar place, and that was really helpful when we came to a planning committee. And I think the panel's views on this site were one of the main reasons why that very poor scheme didn't get through the planning committee process and was refused. We then held a workshop in terms of what we wanted to see come forward, and the revised scheme that was then submitted was a far better scheme in terms of the urban realm, the connections, etc., that came forward. We've got to a stage where there's a resolution to grant planning permission for that. Hopefully, we are in the final stages of 106, and a planning permission will be granted. As I say, St Modwyn have pulled out. Whether that means that this particular scheme will be delivered or whether it will be something else, but certainly the line in the sand in terms of a planning permission will be a far better scheme than would have been the case if we hadn't gone through a design review process. Next site is Coal Orchard, which again is a riverside site, close to the town centre, between the Firepool just over there really, just between the Firepool site and the town centre. Another one that's come through the design review panel. Equally important site, a smaller site, but a real opportunity to bring more housing into the town centre and improve the retail mix, to have a retail scheme that's much smaller than Firepool, that will add to the town centre. Town centre sites like this are hugely controversial in respect of everybody in Taunton has a view. There are those that think, well, how on earth can you remove all the car parking? That's critical, it's next to the theatre, etc. There are those that want to see it redevelopment. There are those that want to see community uses, etc., etc. Again, and some of those arguments were very articulate. They were well reasoned. To have that independent view from the design review panel, I think, was really helpful in this case. And another one that, Bryn, has the planning permission been issued? I think it has, just about, yeah. So the old swimming pool on the site, I think, will be demolished within the next, or started to be demolished within the next few weeks. So that's a site that the council is bringing forward itself. The opportunities in Taunton's town centre are pretty great, because the town generally has never really faced the river frontage. Those of you who know Taunton, this is quite typical. There are very few places where you've got buildings that address the river frontage. So here at the one on the left is Tangier, another site that's been difficult to bring forward. An old gasworks site where the viability and the contamination has and some of the flood risk issues have meant that it's taken an awful long time coming forward. We currently have a scheme that's been to the panel, and I say that one's in the planning process. The one on the right is the former Lidl site, again even closer to the town centre, where Churchill Retirement Homes brought forward a fairly standard scheme that came to the design review panel. The design review panels and the views of the local planning authority were fairly similar. It's just such a critical site, it just wasn't good enough. And that key thing for Taunton to turn the town around and face the river just wasn't happening. So a different outcome with that one. The developer hasn't taken on board the views of the design review panel, which in my experience is unusual. Normally, I've always said that every scheme that's gone forward has come out with a better outcome than going into the panel process. This one, they've just appealed against non-determination. So it'll be our first experience of using the panel's views in terms of a Section 78 appeal. So in terms of some of the things we're doing, the strengths of Taunton, this was something that just came out of a meeting the other week, and that people said were the great things about Taunton. Great education, I think that's public and private sector. Healthcare was very good. Access to the countryside, and certainly through the Garden Town Plan work, we're doing some work with the AONB partnerships, because Taunton is fairly exceptional in terms of almost being in walking distance of two areas of outstanding natural beauty, with the Quantocks on the northern side really close to Monkton Heathfield, and then the Blackdown Hills just the other side of the motorway. And I think the other thing about Taunton's great strengths is I think it's the best located place in the southwest in terms of its transport links. An hour and 40 minutes to London. I know those in Exeter would give the right arm for those sort of timings. Clearly, shorter train distances to the north of England as well. It's on the confluence there of the M5 and the A358, and provided the right scheme comes forward for those improvements the Highways England are bringing forward, and it actually links into Taunton rather than bypassing us. I think that will make Taunton an even better place. In terms of the Garden Town designation, what has it brought to us? Actually, not a lot that's really tangible, other than capacity funding that's associated with it, and that's in the times of tight local authority resourcing, up to nearly £1 million so far in terms of of funding towards capacity to deliver is a huge benefit to us. The less obvious is, I think it's meant that our ability to negotiate direct with government has been improved. We can get the links in where I think others are not getting that at the moment. I've made reference to the Housing Infrastructure Award for Staple Grove. There's a much larger forward fund bid, up to 83 million in total, which has got through to the next stage. There's an awful lot of work. We're certainly not home and dry in terms of that, and I've seen what the total package is and the number of bids. So there's a lot of work to be done, and that's a sort of collaborative bid that we've done with Sedgemoor District Council and with the Somerset County Council, looking around the Hinkley Point housing zone and bringing forward infrastructure necessary to support those big developments. We've also been successful in terms of the Planning Delivery Fund, which is an award to Taunton Deane to ensure that we have a more proactive approach to good design, which is fantastic, and certainly some of that money is already going into preparing a design guide that will support the Garden Town plan and the local plan going forward. There are challenges, and the designation of a garden town when most of these sites are already in the planning process in itself, you can understand what the huge challenges that brings. There are already expectations from developers, landowners, and suddenly you're adding in higher expectations from the community. So the challenge of delivery is huge for us to deliver something more than would otherwise be the case. All the land around Taunton is optioned. You won't be surprised about that. So therefore land values are established, developers' expectations, landowners' expectations are largely set. So that makes it difficult to change things. The main sites are already allocated. It's well through the planning process. So with almost an outline permission in place for most of the sites, how are we going to up the quality of these sites? And again, that's where, linking into the panel, I think that's where the panel will have a greater role going forward. Maybe a little later in the process than ideally I would have liked, and I know this design review panel and all other design review panels I've dealt with in the past all say, come to us as soon as possible. We don't want to be dealing with, looking at planning applications. We want early engagement. I'm not sure that we're there, but we certainly can. So I say it's a huge challenge to accelerate delivery and produce high quality results. But we do need a step change in design quality in Taunton, otherwise we've failed. Our other huge challenge, and I think from my perspective of Taunton, there's never really been an awful lot of public opinion that's very anti-development. I think there's much more of an acceptance of growth in Taunton than you would experience in a lot of places. The public concern always comes across in terms of, have we got the infrastructure? Will we have the infrastructure in place to support this? We're going tonight to full council to agree the governance arrangements to start spending some of our community infrastructure levy money, but whatever processes are put in, whether it be SIL, Section 106, there are always huge gaps in terms of delivering infrastructure. So a little bit of a trip round Taunton, I say the good, the bad and the ugly, and they're just a little random. This is a site that those of you who travel in by train from the east will know well, and I'm sure you all love. Is a scheme that actually went to the regional panels a long time ago, but only in terms of the master plan, that the detail didn't. This is an interesting one. This I always think is a monument to the last recession, in terms of it was a scheme that came forward as part of a very large high density scheme of flats at Firepool Lock. When the recession hit, the scheme was no longer viable. The one thing and I think you could see other sites around that continued to be delivered at that point, was the affordable housing. And this was the affordable housing block, so it's 100% affordable housing. It might have looked a lot better if it had been part of that larger development, but it's as I say, that's one that came forward on its own and sits not particularly well, I don't think. These, I say, they're a little random. This is just a devil's in the detail one out at Monkton Heathfield, just in terms of the play area and the cabinet and actually spoils, I think that the open area that's there. I think we've got a long way to go in terms of achieving high quality places, in terms of what's been delivered. I don't think what's been delivered in Taunton is the worst by any means, and we've got some good examples, but we have got quite a bit, particularly at Monkton Heathfield, of fairly standardised house types. Can't see any landscaping within that, and something that's very car dominated. Again, something similar, slightly better, but again, it's certainly when the vision is for a distinctive place. That certainly isn't distinctive of Taunton. The left-hand one is that again, it's getting the mix right. That sort of arbitrary flat over garage somewhere in the middle of the development that doesn't fit very well. The right-hand one, in terms of, I think it's quite highways dominated, and I think that's something we want to be looking at again going forward. This is one of the roundabouts on the Monkton Heathfield Eastern Relief Road. In terms of Taunton Deane, Garden Town, Newtown, it's a little Milton Keynes really. It's huge, and I think that's something where there's been a scheme. We really wanted an outer relief road to make sure that there wasn't severance of the community. But once you do that, it's actually what do you end up delivering? And I think there are particular issues with that road around Monkton Heathfield in terms of it being the A38, and particularly Highways England's view that it needs to be ability to become a dual carriageway at some later date, because it acts as the diversionary route should the M5 be closed, as happens seemingly all too regularly at the moment. But I think we need to be firm going forward to make sure that we're actually achieving the right places and the quality. And I really don't think that road at the moment, whilst very good in terms of the function it performs, is really doing the job in what we want to see going forward in terms of a garden town. This is a scheme. This is an older one actually. This is the old rugby club, not a million miles from here. Probably 15 years ago now, something like that. It was built. A scheme where at the time it was all about reducing parking levels, which would discourage people from having cars. I think this one in reality is a great example of where people can park cars all over the place, and has caused great problems. But all done for the right reasons. Was good at its time, but I don't think necessarily we would look for something similar now. Oops, wrong way. This site is part of the Firepool Lock site. Crest have brought forward what I think is a really good development there. It's much more interesting than a lot that's been brought forward in Taunton. Look at that Monkton Heathfield one that was car dominated. You've still got vehicle parking in front of the houses there, but the trees have really made a difference. Interestingly, this one is coming up to 5 years old, and we're getting to the point where the landscaping scheme doesn't automatically need, enforceable. So we've had some challenges from the residents here to actually want to chop these trees down because they're getting in the way of the cars. So that's a message that I think, in terms of that long-term stewardship argument, that we need to take forward, that actually we've got to be very careful, and we may end up with a situation that you need to look at your landscaping schemes after 5 years and potentially, the tree preservation orders are the right way forward to make sure that this is maintained in its current way beyond that initial period. Another couple of pictures of this Crest scheme, and I think this is a good example, and this will be the challenge at Monkton Heathfield, is I think they've successfully got a lot higher densities in here than we would normally see from the volume house builders, and that I say that will be a huge challenge. I wasn't aware that CG Fry was sponsoring this event to come up, so I'm glad I put in the left one there, because this is Hilly Fields again. Don't know how old it is. It's probably again about 15 years old, something like that. There's an element of Poundbury about it, and I'm not going into the debates about whether that's the right approach or not. I think in layout terms, it is a really good example, and it has stood the test of time. I think if you go there, it's quite interesting to see, because a lot of the criticism you hear around Poundbury is, oh yeah, but it's easy because it's duchy land and they have the greater controls. This is the attempt at trying to deliver something similar without those controls, and I still think it is very, very successful. The right-hand one, we're still building Pastiche in Taunton. That was taken a few weeks ago. Thatched house down at Killams, in an area where I don't think there are any other thatched houses, even older ones. This is the back of that building over there. This is one where, so what I will say is, in terms of design review, we've taken larger sites, smaller sites. This predates this design review panel and actually went to the regional panel. Whether you think it's a good development or not, I could assure you it's an awful lot better than the scheme that went into the regional panel. I always felt that we had good when we were using the regional panel, we did have some good results. Why I was keen that we had more local design review was the number of schemes that they could deal with, and would only deal with the very big, the largest of schemes, and I felt there was certainly a need for design review in Taunton for those sort of middle-sized schemes that couldn't reach the regional panel. Jonathan mentioned briefly the MPPF. I would be a bit more enthusiastic about it. I think it's gone further than the previous version, and the messages I've got coming out of government is that there is a greater emphasis on design. We'll see when the various cases come forward post MPPF whether that really is the case. But I think there is an acceptance, and the initial findings of the Letwin review are suggesting that actually there's a greater acceptance of new development if the quality is good. So they see that quality will help in terms of that accelerated delivery. So I think the wording of the MPPF now reflects that. So it said all the right things. Early discussion, yes, we need to get in there as early as possible before things are too fixed, because we need to clarify expectations. And I say, in terms of, that's Taunton's Garden Town's biggest challenge is in terms of where we are in the process. We need design advice and review arrangements. Of course we do, and to have that there is really important. And that the local authorities should have regard to the outcome of these processes, including any recommendations made by design review panels. Taunton Deeds specifically, when we had agreed to use this panel, we went to council to get a resolution from council to confirm that the views of the design review panel would be a material consideration in any planning application when it went to planning committee, and that, I think that's been very successful. In terms of what some of the things that we're now doing, taking the Garden Town forward, we've appointed Design Action to prepare a design guide for Taunton Deane. They were already doing some work for West Somerset, and as many of you will know, from May next year, we are no longer Taunton Deane and West Somerset. We are West Somerset and Taunton Council. So Somerset West and Taunton Council, mustn't get that wrong. So therefore, we want something that covers equally the whole of what will be quite a diverse area. As I referred to, the master planning work that's being developed for Monkton Heathfield, and I think we're moving to trying to be much more proactive in terms of that, rather than making sure that we're not just being led by the developers who don't control the whole site. So we've appointed Thrive to do that master planning work. Something I think that has proved really useful up until this point, and particularly going forward, is actually having some transport planning a person dedicated to Taunton and delivery of Taunton. I know, speaking to colleagues at Somerset County Council, when there is criticism of schemes coming forward from developers, often the response is, yeah, we know it could have been a lot better, but they didn't engage with us, and we have to deal with what's in front of us. So to have a transport planner as part of the team, I think has been really helpful to this point, and will have huge benefits going forward. Taunton Deane is going through a major transformation in terms of it's the way it operates. That is partly driven by spending, so there are spending cuts that come out of that. But the council is very much refocusing on where it prioritises. So resources are going to be key in terms of that, and the council will need to focus on fewer projects, but the key ones. Resources is a huge issue for us, and the design review panel actually brings us a lot of that resource that we can't afford to have in-house. The days of councils having architects, teams and technical services and all of that in-house support, I think are long gone now. I won't go into any detail in terms of the Garden Town plan, other than to say that we are producing a plan, not a statutory development plan, but a sort of a two-stage document. The first element being a sort of high-level vision and principles document, and then some action planning to bring forward a number of the projects that we will do. It'll be a non-statutory document. It'll be reviewed regularly, but will provide some of the evidence base to the new local plan that work has commenced on to deliver a new local plan. But obviously, it will no longer be a Taunton Deane local plan. It will have to be a local plan that covers both an update to the Taunton Deane core strategy, but also a review of the more recent West Somerset local plan. Sort of summarising in terms of what I feel the design review panel can add to the process, and has very much added to the process. I think this council is very much committed to continuing to use the panel, and I hope that continues to be the case for the new council, and I see no reason why. Firstly, the objective assessment, it takes the heat out of the debate. Having that third party, I think the Coal Orchard and the Firepole cases have been key in that, and that we wouldn't be where we are with either of those developments, I think, without that input from the panel. The second point, the logistics, the cost, the access to expertise. You saw on Jonathan's slide the range of disciplines that the panel can bring. I know when bringing schemes forward, we can have that discussion around what we between us, what we feel we need for any particular site coming to the panel. Councils can't afford to have much of this resource in-house. This is a very cost-effective way of bringing it forward. It's great for the local planning authority's point of view, but it's so cheap for developers to actually, to employ the people, that range of expertise. For the cost it takes as part of pre-app, for the benefit that it achieves, it must represent excellent value for money. I've already mentioned about the arbitration and the being a material consideration in decision making. And finally, this is just an example, and it just happened nicely that it was the last planning committee at Taunton Deane. We had 4 sites, all of which had been through the process. I don't think any of those sites we would have been able to have gone to a regional panel in the past, not large enough. Coal Orchard maybe, the others I don't think so. So having the local panel has enabled us to get design review for these schemes.
4 applications, all went to planning committee, all controversial in their own way, and all were granted permission because, maybe not because, but certainly helped by the fact that they all had the support of the panel. Thank you.